Shalom. First off, I want to give all praise, honor, and glory unto Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahar Kudash. I want to give double honors to the apostles and elders of GMS who have taught us His word and teach us His word today. And I want to give a salutation unto the elect of the nation of Israel. In this lesson, what I want to go over is how, in this time, us prophets today have been given um, more knowledge and wisdom than the prophets of old. And what I mean by that is that, the vision is being made clear unto us. The prophets of old had the visions. They were moved by the Spirit of the Most High to write down what would happen today, but they didn't have the full picture, because they weren't in the time of the prophecy. Right now, we are in the time of the prophecy that the prophets wrote about. We are seeing it happen right before us. And I want to read 1 Peter chapter 1, verse 10, which says, of which salvation the prophets have inquired and searched diligently, who prophesied of the grace that shall come unto you. Let's read this in the NLT. It says, this salvation was something even the prophets wanted to know more about when they prophesied about this gracious salvation prepared for you. Let's read on in the NLT. It says, they wondered what time or situation the Spirit of Yahweh Shai within them was talking about when he told them in advance about Yahweh Shai's suffering and his great glory afterward. So as these things were being written, as the prophecies of, Yahweh Shai coming on the scene and suffering what he had to suffer, and um, you know, him being served up as a sacrifice for our nation, the prophecies of Yahweh Shai's second coming that is soon to come in our time. The prophets didn't understand all these things in its fullness. They received the vision. They wrote about it, but it was just like if we had a vision or a dream today on, seeing a time that is to come. We may see that snapshot, portion of the end, but once we get to that time, then we will understand it in its fullness of the vision that the Lord gave us. It's just like receiving a trailer or watching a trailer for a movie. You can see the trailer, you can see, what is shown to you, but you don't fully understand everything until you watch the movie in its fullness. And then when you rewatch the trailer, you see what different parts in that trailer, was alluding to, or, you understand the full picture. Let's read verse 12 in the NLT. It says, they were told that their messages were not for themselves, but for you. Right, because you read in Daniel chapter 12, for example, Daniel himself, he said that he didn't understand all the visions that the Lord was giving him, and he asked the Lord. He's like, well, like what are you showing me? Like, help me understand this. But the Lord said, it's not for this time. Well, let's grab it. Let's grab Daniel chapter 12, verse 9. Let's read actually Daniel 12 and 8. It says, and I heard, but I understood not. Then said I, O my Lord, what shall be the end of these things? Verse 9, it says, and he said, go thy way, Daniel, for the words are closed up and sealed to the time of the end. And now, this book has been unsealed. Yahweh Shai has, Yahweh Bahashem, Yahweh Shai has given us the ability, anointed us with the eye salve, given us eyes to see, ears to hear, to understand the mysteries of this book, to understand the words that were written therein, and being able to decipher these prophecies, decipher these mysteries and dark sayings. And now that we have been able to understand what was being written, well, let's get Habakkuk chapter 2, verse 3. It says, for the vision, let's read verse 2. It says, and the Lord answered me and said, write the vision and make it plain upon tables, that he may run that readeth it. And we're reading that vision, through the scriptures. Every time we read about the prophecies, we're reading these different visions that was made plain upon tables. But it says in verse 3, for the vision is yet for an appointed time, but at the end it shall speak and not lie. So these things that the prophecies were having visions of, and the things that they were seeing, the mysteries that the Lord was giving them, they wrote it for us, because in this time those visions are speaking. And now we can link these different things written to things that are happening right before our eyes. We can go in the news and see the prophecies taking place. Just like In Revelation chapter 13, when we read about the mark, John the Revelator saw people getting that mark in their hand and in their forehead. He saw people not being able to buy or sell unless they had that mark. He's seen these things, but now in this time we see the we see the details of it. We see the ins and outs of it. We see, Elon Musk rolling this Neuralink out. We see we have more of a grasp on it. Or for example, we see the prophets of old wrote about the ICBMs. The prophets of old wrote about World War III and America being destroyed and the missiles being shot. But when we read about these certain things, I won't grab the scriptures yet, but we'll go to them here in a second. When we read about it, the prophets describe them as arrows, describe them as glittering swords. But now we understand, the prophets saw these missiles and they didn't understand what they were seeing. We know what missiles are. We know how a missile works and the destructive power of it. We see it happening right before us. And so the Lord showed the prophets these visions, but they didn't understand 100% what was going on in these visions. They just saw it, and the Lord, commanded them to write about it. The Lord commanded to make that vision plain upon tables. But let's read verse 3 again. It says, "For the vision is yet for an appointed time, but at the end it shall speak and not lie. Though it tarry, wait for it, because it will surely come. It will not tarry." So now we are seeing the different nations around the world attaining nuclear capability. We're seeing, war tensions rising and rising and rising. We're seeing the culmination of the war going on over there in the so-called Middle East. We see, Israel fighting against Iran and the prophecy of Ezekiel 38 with Russia getting into that wartime spirit. We see it happening right now. So I'm gonna grab we're gonna go to Second Ezra chapter 9 and verse 3. It says, "Therefore when there shall be seen earthquakes and uproars of the people in the world, then shalt thou well understand that the Most High spake of those things from the days that were before thee, even from the beginning." And it's not just the earthquakes and the uproars of the people of the world, even though we see those things happening right now as well, but it's all the prophecies that we read about in these scriptures, all throughout Second Ezra, all throughout Isaiah, all throughout Matthew, and all the prophecies in the scriptures. Now we're understanding, the Lord spoke about these things through his prophets before us, and now we see it happening, and we understand that this is the end. We're in the end. The prophets had visions of the end. They wrote about the end, but they weren't there. So now that we are here, we have been given a higher degree of understanding than the prophets before us. It says in verse 5, "For like as all that is made in the world had the beginning and an end, and the end is manifest." And let's grab the etymology of that word manifest, which is clearly revealed to the eye or the understanding. It's clear. It says open to view or comprehension. So it says plainly apprehensible, clear, apparent, evident. The prophets of old would question the Lord at times, like, can you help me to understand what you're showing me better? But it's in this time that the Lord made it plain, made it clear to us, made it evident. So I want to grab those examples that I mentioned earlier. First off, we can go to Revelation chapter 6 Revelation chapter 6 and verse 12. It says, "And I beheld when he had opened the sixth seal, and lo, there was a great earthquake, and the sun became black as sackcloth of hair, and the moon became as blood. And the stars of heaven fell into the earth, even as a fig tree casteth her untimely figs when she is shaken of a mighty wind." Now, this prophecy hasn't happened for us yet. This is at the last trump, when those missiles are shot. That's what it's describing with those the stars of heaven falling onto the earth. But it's describing how the sun became black as a sackcloth of hair What is that speaking about? That's when those missiles hit, is going to cause a nuclear winter, and the sun is going to be blocked out. Because when we read verse 14, it says, "And the heaven departed as a scroll when it is rolled together." That's the mushroom cloud. It says, "And every mountain and island were moved out of their places." Now, like I said before, this prophecy hasn't happened yet, but we have a better understanding on this prophecy. We can give more of a sense to this prophecy because, you know, how John the Revelator wrote about it. He called the missiles stars from heaven because that's what they looked like to him. You know, he described the mushroom cloud as you know, the heaven departing as a scroll, but we know what he meant by that. You know, for example, when the scriptures in Revelation chapter 13, when it says that you know, the beast make it fire to come down from heaven, we understand that that was during World War II, when Esau caused, drop them bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. You know, we see these things happening, and we can give more of a sense to them, and basically translate them to the times that are happening right now, to the times of the end, in a way that the prophets of old weren't able to do. So I want to grab one more precept just to drive that point home, and then we'll close the lesson out. We'll go to Job chapter 20, and we'll go to verse 23, which says, "When he is about to fill his belly, the Most High shall cast the fury of his wrath upon him, and shall rain it upon him while he is eating." You know, so when Esau is at the peak of his great reset of his new world order, you know, when he has gotten most of the people on this earth chipped, you know, he's at the fullness of his sufficiency, as it says in verse 22. It says that the fury of the Most High is going to be rained upon him. Now, what is that fury? It says, "He shall flee from the iron weapon, and the bow of steel shall strike him through." What's that iron weapon? It's the missiles. What's that bow of steel? You know, it's the missiles. You know, just like the scriptures describe the missiles as arrows in certain precepts. When you look at a missile, it looks just like an arrow. You know, certain missiles look like arrows. So the prophets had to describe them as these things because they didn't understand exactly, you know, what missiles were at the time. Or just like, you know, the scriptures don't blatantly say America because, you know, the prophets didn't know the name America. That's why they described it as Babylon the Great, as Egypt, as Sodom, because America, you know, spiritually takes on the traits of all those places. So that's how it was described by the prophets. You know, it says, "It is drawn and cometh out of the body, yea, the glittering sword cometh out of his gall, terrors are upon him." We understand that this is speaking about the missiles coming out of the earth through the missile silos and being shot into the air. We understand that the fire that basically the propulsion behind the missile, that's that fire pushing that missile to go at the speeds it travels. That's why the missiles was described as a glittering sword. You know, so you know, that's all I want to grab with this lesson. You know, Lord's will, it was edifying. You know, once again, I want to give all praise, honor, and glory unto Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahar Kodash. I want to give double honors to the apostles and elders, and a salutation unto the elect. And shalom.